Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Michael Wald, the Blood Detective. Thank you so much for joining me today. And today's podcast is entitled Big Energy. So I'm going to impart lots of important aspects of energy production and causes of low energy that I've learned in my 33 or so years of clinical holistic practice. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a doctor of chiropractic with a board certification in nutrition. I also am a dietitian, and I have a sports nutrition certification and a master's degree in nutrition. I'm a life coach, and I provide acupuncture to my clients. I have an MD diploma, but not an active license to practice medicine. So let's get into it. First, by giving you a quick disclaimer that this information is for your education. It is not meant as a substitute for sound medical or health advice. So let's talk about the prevalence of lack of energy. So it's astounding when you think about it. Nearly half of adults report feeling chronically low in energy, with women more often affected due to hormonal fluctuations, nutrient losses, multitasking, fatigue, also hormonal imbalances, stress. There's so many different causes. Men experience fatigue frequently as well, often tied to stress, poor sleep, and declining testosterone levels as among the highest prevalence of causes, you might say, of energy issues. Persistent fatigue diminishes motivation, productivity, and engagement in daily life. So this is a big deal. It weakens emotional resilience and reduces enjoyment in personal relationships and family interactions. Low energy limits participation in community and hobbies and physical activity. It erodes life satisfaction. And over time, chronic exhaustion fosters anxiety, and there is sometimes a disconnect in many aspects of a person's life simply because of lack of energy. So I've put together some of the more common causes of loss of energy, and there are others, but let's get to these ones first, since they are among the top several that I see on a routine basis. Malnutrition, malnutrition and malabsorption. So malnutrition is obviously poor nutritional intake. Now, a person could eat a lot, but that might be calorically rich, but nutrient lacking. And then there is malnutrition, which is what I just mentioned. And then the malabsorption part has to do with some problem that the person has in their physiology that doesn't allow them to absorb what they eat. So you're not what you eat, you're what you absorb from what you eat. Malnutrition, malabsorption go together. And then there's chronic diseases of the heart, kidney, liver, and diabetes, which increase exponentially nutrient needs, which put stress upon the energy producing pathways and cells in our bodies and organelles like the mitochondria. Most of us have heard about the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. And people with low thyroid, that's a very commonly accepted cause of fatigue, where the person either doesn't produce enough thyroid hormones, or they do, but they have antibodies in an autoimmune situation that are blocking the use of the antibodies. So these people come in and say, Dr. Wald, here's my labs. The doctor said my thyroid levels look fine. He doesn't know what to do with me, so he referred me to a psychiatrist. It happens all the time. The doctor failed to measure whether or not the person's hypothyroid was autoimmune involved, and even though the levels looked okay, they're being blocked, either where the thyroid hormone is being blocked by an antibody so it can't get into the cell, or that thyroid hormone is bound and it still amounts to the same thing. It can't be used when it's like this. So hypothyroidism, if you have it, you need to know, if you don't already, is it autoimmune or not? Adrenal fatigue due to stress overload and medications and other causes. The adrenal glands, which are about the size of our thumbs, on top of our fists, which are about the size of our kidneys. So we've got two adrenal glands, and they secrete various stress hormones and adrenaline, for example. They're responsible for reducing cortisol. But when they shrink, or when they get old, or when they are impaired due to, let's say, corticosteroid use, for example, or high sugar diets, will cause a fatigue throughout the entire body. And then there is anemia. I put here iron balance. That's the most common cause of anemia, which is deficiency. But I have another podcast, which you can check out, on various types of anemias. I think I cover at least 12 of them. So there's different types of anemia, and most of them your doctors aren't even looking at. So people are suffering needlessly for years or even decades with nutritional anemias that could easily be corrected. And I've mentioned autoimmune issues. I'll just throw in there inflammatory disorders as well. So autoimmune issues tend to disrupt a lot of different body systems. So the answer to the energy return for someone with any of these issues is to fix these issues or whatever else is causing the low energy. Now, that might sound on the surface very obvious, but most people that I do consultations with and I talk about looking at the cause, it makes sense to them, but they've never thought about it. So it's important to look at the cause or causes. So, what are some of the nutritional and lifestyle contributors, you might say, to the whole energy situation? Generally speaking, to manage low energy, and this is in a general sense, you want to make sure that you have a proper protein balanced diet, that protein is a good part of your diet. The amount of protein is based on your lean body mass, based on what's called a bioimpedance test. That will tell you the percentage of muscle, water, fat in your body, and based on that, you can determine how many grams of protein, carbohydrates, and fats you need. And again, the proteins are best consumed in the morning, and we need proteins to ward off and manage lots of energy problems, lots of autoimmune problems. And then whole food meals with iron and B12 and magnesium and antioxidants are obviously important. Avoiding refined and processed sugars and excess caffeine. Caffeine, when you drink a smaller amount of it, can actually help with energy, and when you drink it habitually, can actually lower your energy. In terms of supplements to consider, various micronutrient formulas, you want to make sure your B vitamins are there, various adaptogenic herbs such as ashwagandha and rhodiola. Adaptogenic means that if, let's say, the adrenal stress is low or the thyroid is low, it'll bring it up, and if it's too high, it'll bring it down. So adaptogenic herbs help to balance. Okay. And then we want to think about coenzyme Q10, which is needed to produce ATP in the body, which is adenine triphosphate, an energy molecule. Omega-3 fatty acids help restore energy in some who have energy loss from inflammation or cardiovascular disease or circulation problems, and others. And then there's L-carnitine that helps the body get omega-3 fatty acids into the cell membrane, into the heart of the cell, where it can help the cell function properly and produce ATP. And again, that L-carnitine acts like a shuttle to bring the omega-3 fatty acids into the cell. And then with energy issues, you want to think of your gut. You want to use probiotics, digestive enzymes to help you digest your foods. If you take enzymes with your foods, it helps you digest your foods. If you take the enzymes about a half an hour or more after foods or before food, it actually helps to digest autoimmune cells that are floating around and inflammatory mediators, and that can restore energy just by itself. And then there is anti-inflammatory herbs to help restore absorption. So everything from curcumin to trans-resveratrol are very good anti-inflammatories, and they do help provide more energy because most of the causes of low energy in the body do involve inflammation. And then there's sleep restoration, obviously. Maintain a consistent bedtime, reduce screen exposure, possibly use melatonin or magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate does not affect the intestinal tract. Very good for energy. We need magnesium for over 500 different enzymatic reactions in the body. And then there is a melatonin, which is made by the pineal gland, which is supposed to be produced to help us sleep better. And if you're not getting proper sleep and you're going to try melatonin, I would suggest trying it as a liquid dropper form. You keep it next to the bed with the amount that you need in the dropper already, so that when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't have to sit up, get water, take a pill, swallow the pill. This can ruin sleep in and of itself. But the liquid melatonin, just put it under the tongue and go back to sleep. It may not do the trick for you, but that's the way you're supposed to take melatonin. The amount is varied from person to person. And in terms of sleep, they say we need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. That's important. More important than that, based on sleep studies, is the regularity of sleep. going to bed and waking up at this roughly the same time is more important than the number of hours. And then exercise, resistance training with moderate aerobic activity to boost mitochondrial function and mood and circulation and lymphatic flow, and helping the body to break down inflammatory mediators. So these are some of the things to think about. In terms of the testing, well, when I sit with a patient and I narrow down what I think the top causes may be, the labs are obviously going to be associated with those suspected causes. So I don't know you, so these are just some guesses I put down here based on my 33 years of experience and some of the common things I would do on someone with a complaint of energy, which begins with a complete metabolic panel, CMP panel they call that, a fasting glucose level, an insulin level. You want to look at your thyroid. Many doctors do not do enough of the thyroid test. They'll measure like T3 only or T4 only. That's wrong. So you need these tests here, TSH, free T3, free T4, and reverse T3 if you want to get to the bottom of what's going on. You want to look at nutrient deficiencies. If you're iron anemic, you're not going to produce enough hemoglobin. That means you will not oxygenate your cells very well. So that's going to impact your entire body. Ferritin is a test that lets us know the amount of stored iron in the body, in the liver specifically, and that can be low as well. And that means that a person needs either iron and or protein or both of those as a supplement. Also B12, folic acid, which is B9, and vitamin D3, big ones connected with fatigue. But again, these can be very different for you. And then inflammation. We said that inflammation can cause low energy. Resolving inflammation, if that is the cause of a person's low energy, it will miraculously come back. C-reactive protein is a very important inflammatory marker for that purpose. And also something called homocysteine, which is an inflammatory marker, but it is also a test of how well someone is using B6, B12, folic acid, vitamin C, E, and B1, roughly in that order. But the first three are the most important: folic acid, B12, B6. And when you take folic acid, B12, and B6 for energy, make sure that the B6 is phosphorylated. Make sure that the B12 and folic acid are methylated. And then adrenal stress and cortical rhythm assessments, so salivary or blood cortisol levels. If the adrenal glands are involved in your low energy, that is very important to look at that test. You might have all kinds of things going on in the body causing energy issues that will then impact the adrenals by weakening them. So obviously the weakened adrenal assessment is only part of the problem, so we might have to look elsewhere. And once we figure out what we want to do here in terms of the testing, I make sure to give my clients the right dose of the nutritional supplements. They are orthomolecular doses, which just means the optimal dose for that person. So I will compare that person's blood work to the ranges of normal that are on the tests. Those are based on average people that are your sex and roughly your age. But then there are healthy ranges, which I have invented, I suppose you might say, over my last 25 years of my practice, where I have determined what the healthy ranges are for every lab test. And lots of the labs now are coming up with the same numbers. So for example, most lab tests that measure your lipids, your blood fats, like LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, they will tell you if you're 130 and below, they consider that normal. If you're 100 and below, that's optimal, because there's a much better life and health span when you're 100 and below for LDL as opposed to 130, but 130 is normal. So there is a normal number and there's an optimal number, but the lab tests don't tell you much about the other ones. And that'll about do it. I hope that this presentation was practical for you. Please let me know what other topics you want to hear, and I appreciate you letting me know about this one. I'll see you at the next podcast. Thank you.